This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And so all the buzz about the Republicans' last best chance to replace Obamacare, which is scheduled for a Senate vote next week, the Cassidy Graham legislation, is about Jimmy Kimmel helping to mainstream the discussion by offering his take on it, because he has spoken previously with Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. He had Bill Cassidy on the show. Not happy with Bill Cassidy in this legislation because Jimmy Kimmel understands girls bouncing on trampolines, but he doesn't understand healthcare policy. And, frankly, it's just conventional left-wing pap that he was smearing across the TV sets around America yesterday. Here's what Kimmel had to say after playing a clip of what Bill Cassidy said to him.
I'm sorry, he does not understand.
Oh, I get it. I don't understand because I'm a talk show host, right? Well, and then help me out. Which part don't I understand? Is it the part where you cut $243 billion from federal health care assistance? Am I not understanding the part where states would be allowed to let insurance companies price you out of coverage for having pre-existing conditions? Maybe I don't understand the part of your bill in which federal funding disappears completely after 2026. Or maybe it was the part where the plans are no longer required to pay for essential health benefits like maternity care or pediatric visits, or the part with the American Medical Association.
Yeah, you get it.
And he thinks he's the moral authority on healthcare because his son had heart surgery and needs 2 more heart surgeries.
And so to answer his question, which part does he understand? All the parts. All the parts that he ticked off he doesn't understand. For actual understanding of what Cassidy Graham does and does not do, we're pleased to be joined by Ramesh Ponnuru, not a late-night talk show host, but a healthcare policy expert. He's a columnist for Bloomberg View and senior editor for National Review. Ramesh, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on again.
So the this last best chance for Republican replace of Obamacare and the demagoguery that you're hearing not just from Jimmy Kimmel but from Democrats on the topic, can you separate the hype from the reality of what Cassidy Graham portends to do?
Well, boy, it's going to be hard because there is a lot of hysteria that's run rampant that Jimmy Kimmel is certainly contributing to, and he just doesn't understand a lot of the things that he was talking about. The fact that the bill does not provide for funding after 2026 does not mean that in 2026, all of a sudden, Congress is going to stop funding health care. That's just not, that's a completely absurd scenario. Kimmel has said that the plan would throw 30 million people off of health insurance. We don't have even a close to accurate estimate on this. But if it's anything like previous bills that have followed the same pattern, what you'd probably get from the Congressional Budget Office is an estimate that about 15 million people, as soon as you get rid of the individual mandate and stop fining them for not getting health insurance, they'll stop getting health insurance. But they're not being kicked off. They'll be choosing to go without insurance because they don't think that Obamacare compliant insurance is worth the money to them. And one other point that's really very easily lost in all this, look, this plan gives some flexibility to the states. It does cut some spending. It gets rid of the individual mandate. But most of the spending, the taxes, and the regulations in Obamacare, it leaves in place.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel,
it's a very modest piece of legislation. Sorry, Amy.
No, Senator Bill Cassidy, who appeared on Kimmel's show, said that he would not flunk the Jimmy Kimmel test, and people should know that the Jimmy Kimmel test, according to Cassidy, would the child born with a congenital heart disease be able to get everything he or she needs in the first year of life? So does this new proposal accomplish that? Or is it too hard to tell?
It is a little hard to tell. But the Kimmel test has also been described as nobody should go without needed medical care. regardless of income.
Mm-hmm.
And, depending on how stringent your view of that is, it's possible to say that Graham Cassidy doesn't pass that, but neither does Obamacare. Neither do most single-payer health care systems. There is no system in which having money doesn't help you to get better health care. There are a range of possible systems that make a good faith effort to try to get medical care to those who need it. Graham Cassidy certainly qualifies under that. The scenario, in terms of the congenital heart thing, what Kimmel's trying to say, a lot of these opponents are trying to say, is that people with pre-existing conditions and people who sympathize with people with pre-existing conditions have this enormous political power, and they're going to be able to sink this bill in Congress. But at the same time, they're not going to be able to have any effect on anything that the state government does. That's kind of absurd, right? The idea that the state government is going to decide we are not going to do anything to take care of people with pre-existing conditions. If that were true, then this tactic wouldn't be effective in the first place.
And so because of the political power that you're describing, both the big insurers who Kimmel's in bed with, unbeknownst to him, the big drug companies who he's in bed with, unbeknownst to him, but because of the concern you express, is that why you're suggesting that the bill include a prohibition on states from using funds to set up a single payer?
Well, I think that the one problem with the legislation is that it makes it easier for state governments to just pay for the health care of people and get them signed up for government-run health care than it does to have to move towards a private system, because actually a lot of the regulations you've got to keep in place. And the trade-off conservatives want to generally make is to deregulate and in that way make it possible for people to buy cheaper insurance on their own. And you've got to, I think, be even-handed on this. And if you're going to let states experiment with more government-centric healthcare systems, you've got to also let them experiment with more privately run healthcare systems.
Well, right. But so then there's really not a concern because about single payer necessarily, maybe in California, I don't know, but because the block granting and frankly the declining coverage in terms of dollars from the federal government for expanding Medicaid, let's say, as is the case with 31 states or in Obamacare, the states won't be able to finance that takeover.
Yeah, I think that's right. Even California and Vermont have found the challenges of actually financing single payer are too daunting for these extremely liberal states to actually put in place. And it tells you something about this left-wing enthusiasm for single payer right now, that when you actually have to sit down and try to figure out a way to make the accounting work, people don't do it. But I do think that you'd have some piecemeal movements in that direction, that you'd have some states just taking, subgroups of the population and getting them in government-run insurance.
Why is Senator Rand Paul, already leaning towards a no vote on this?
I don't think Rand Paul's position, as stated, makes any sense at all, because what he's saying is this doesn't get rid of all of Obamacare. It doesn't get rid of enough of Obamacare. Therefore, I'm not going to vote for getting rid of any of Obamacare. And he's taken votes in the past where he was willing to get rid of parts of Obamacare. The famous skinny repeal bill of a month or two ago, he voted for it. He voted to just get rid of the individual mandate and the employer mandate without touching any of Obamacare spending or taxes. So it's baffling, and you just wonder how well he understands these issues. Is he sort of the Jimmy Kimmel of the Senate?
Oh boy,
Whoa.
those are fighting words. It's going to be Kimmel and Kilmeade on the undercard, and then you and Rand Paul for the main event. Hey, listen, the criticism from conservatives about previous iterations of Replace was didn't do enough to reduce premiums quick enough. how does Cassidy Graham measure up?
Well, I think the answer is going to be it depends on which state you're in. If a state takes maximum advantage of the new flexibility that the law promises, then I think they can reduce some premiums. You know, some of the versions of the bill have in the past been found to reduce premiums, and it's going to depend on how aggressive the state government is.
All right. He is Ramesh Ponnuru, columnist for Bloomberg View, senior editor for National Review. Ramesh, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.